3, 4. Do 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 ba ba ba. All right, we're rolling live from the wasteland. Freedom Phil out here, sitting next to the survival pod. Here's the doggo. There's me, setting up the parameters here. And what's the topic today? I don't really have any major topic right now because there's nothing that really caught my eye, caught my ear. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about my history and the way I be, and my affinity for like talk radio, or just like when it comes to a lot of stuff on the internet. I am not all about the flashy stuff. I like something where you can listen to it. So it's also why I have such a bone to pick with a lot of these ads that you don't even know what they're selling. It's just like a giant musical nightmare. It's like you go back to your phone, you're like, okay, that's what you're selling. And then you block the ad because if you're going to sell me something, if it doesn't sell good on radio, it doesn't sell good to me on fucking TV. I should be able to hear the ad. By the way, that's why they turn up the volume on television, because they know you're going to walk away to go do something else. But where am I going with this? Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it. And hey, turn up the video speed. And always turn up the video speed. When I upload this, you should be watching this at 1.75 because I can't believe anybody watches things at regular speed. I hear my voice sometimes at regular speed. I'm like, what are you doing watching it at that speed? Let's get into it. You know, I look back at my life and there was the 4 years I lived out in the woods. That's an era of my life. I could go to the primordial era, which encompasses just childhood and nonsense of high school. You know, there's the before, the way before times, and then there's me getting out into the world. Are we truly alive when we're young? Yes, no, something. You know, like, once you're out on your own, you have to kind of do things for yourself. I think that's when you're really living. For some people, their life pretty much the apex was high school. You know, it's like the joke of Al Bundy and all that. You know, where the absolute pinnacle of your life was 3 touchdowns or some nonsense like that. God, it's fucking funny. But it's one of those things where I look back at my life and I'm like, why do I have such an affinity for radio, talk radio, music? Why do I prefer YouTubers that have long form content, you know, that actually has a full bodied thought? And I find myself, much like a lot of you, also sucked into a lot of the, you know, the shorts. And the shorts are there to train your brain to be incapable of understanding a full-bodied conversation. We are taught basically whatever hits the dopamine sensors, whatever hits it. You know, if it doesn't make me money or it doesn't make me happy, I have no time for it. And for guys, you could add in, and even ladies sometimes, if it doesn't get me laid, make me happy, you know, I have no time for it. And we are rendering down people further and further into retardation, in my opinion. I know the R word offends people, but we're in the new era. We're going back to basically people being able to talk like they actually think, which is better. You know, people can go back to talking like normal people. You know, sometimes I look back at that show, that 70s show, and I thought that was the apex. Not the 70s, but just Red Foreman right there. That was the apex. When a man could actually just have an honest to God opinion about how fucking stupid what was going on was stupid. A long ways from that now. But all the same, I look back when I lived in the woods in my early 20s. Original house of sticks, built a yurt, 8 poles around, center pole, 16 poles going up, greenhouse plastic for tarps, for insulation, and then tarps for skins. Had a wood stove. I lived quite comfortably there for 4 years. Got a number of stories about that. Wood stove, Siberian Husky. Occasionally some hippie bitch wanted to fuck, you know. And sometimes it'd be like you go to the medieval fairs and they're like, you look like you're a bunch of problems my parents would hate. Okay, let's scrog. But it was pretty chill out there, you know, laid back. It was Western Washington. The winters aren't cold enough to kill you. Just get you good bedding. Some nights I'd come home, I wouldn't bother making a fire. I'd just be like, fucking, I'm going to bed. And that was my life for 4 years. And honestly, as much as beautiful as it was, I could have used that time much better. Should have been a trucker back then. Should have been a trucker at as early as possible. But that's a whole different story. People were like, how did you entertain yourself? This was right after the first apocalypse. You guys remember Y2K? Oh, it was the end of the fucking world. The clocks were going to reset on the computers, and it's the end of the world. Arr! By the way, if you want to talk, you just got to be a subscriber. Nothing personal. I don't need to hear from a bunch of robots. Setting up the parameters just filters out all the robots. It does. I only want the real people there. And even some of the robots, if they're subscribing, they're making stupid comments. Hey, at least I'm putting coal in my furnace. But out there, we had basically a little solar radio. It was right after Y2K. I think I was out there till 2025. So this must have been 2021. Something like that. And so I had a little Eaton battery-powered radio with the fine tuner. They had the knob and then had the super fine-tuned knob. That one was really good for fishing. You just put it in a Ziploc bag. You're out there on the coast. It's raining. Radio's in a Ziploc bag so it's not getting wet. There was times in a further era of my life when I used to go smelting. And how I would know what time it was, because I wasn't going to keep my cell phone with me. I left that back at the van. Along with anything important, locked and hidden. I could see my van from where I'm at if I shined a light at it, middle of the night. Is Coast to Coast AM on CFAX 1070, 1060, 1070, something like that. But could do the rebroadcast at 2 o'clock in the morning. You hear bum 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 bum. The intro to Coast to Coast AM. And I'd be like, well, I guess smelting's not going so good tonight. But yeah, back when I lived out in the woods, there was Village 900, and then there was CBC. So I listened to a lot of Canadian news because it's what came in. And there was a couple other stations that sort of kind of picked up. And the Village 900, they played Global Roots, Like 1 minute you're hearing French techno jazz, the next minute you're hearing some Asian, electronic, and then you might be hearing some deep folk music or some African click music, It was good times. Some of my friends, they're like, "Why do you listen to that stuff?" I don't know. One of my buddies. You remember that craze that happened back in the early 2000s, where all is before there were hipsters, the proto hipster movement, listening to jazz, and. Like jazz, man, I'm like, they're like, well, this is music. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like some guy there have like do 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 do, and here comes the guy that has the seizure with the horn. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about, like, because there's dentist jazz, dentist, office room jazz, when you're waiting room jazz, and then there's jazz, which is like, extra seizure with the horn. And I'm like the whole joke of our smart people music. No, you just say it's smart people music. It's great branding, by the way. Bunch of pretentious fuck hipsters, listening to jazz and pretending like they're in the intelligente, or whatever they say. Which really just, if you think about it, it's just a bunch of pretentious fucks. I had some friends that were like that. I had one guy that was kind of a punker at the time. Part of the reason that when I got my first wood hauling truck, a 73 Custom 100, it basically had a tape deck in it. And he built me this mixtape of punk rocks songs. And that's what actually got me into punk. Because it was I just remember those songs, had a lot of good times out there. Going to cut firewood and stuff. Back then I had a Siberian Husky. He was a puppy back then. Much bigger than this little guy here. When I say little, everybody thinks he's a little dog, but fuck, he still takes up a lot of space. But, yeah, man, I used to listen to whatever was on, and then me and my friends would go out and do fires out in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of clear cuts in a lot of places, and I'm like, hey, you want to go do a fire? Okay. Which was weird to a lot of people, because they, one of the things about a lot of people is they can only perceive, a lot of dudes are retarded. And a lot of women are retarded but ambitious. And what do I mean by that? If you're not chasing after poon 24/7, they assume you're gay or you're something or you're weird. Or if you're not after this hole, what type of hole are you going after? Because our hole-centric world. So the idea that me and my buddies would just go out there and have a campfire, go up in the woods, overnight in the woods, just to get away from society. That was like, well, that's weird. What, a sausage party? I remember that, and I'm like, and once I heard something like that from somebody, I'm like, dude, why do you even associate? That guy's a fucking retard, you know. By the way, if you want to talk about simp behavior, if everything in your life has to be directed around what women think, getting women, and all that shit, you're a fucking simp. That's just my outlook. Be you if you're bros and have a good time, you know. Of course, then you'll see the people that be like, well, you know, like the term bros before hoes. Ain't nobody believe that shit, you know. Like, and by the way, the reason ain't nobody believe that shit is because, well, most women know that if you don't side with them, there's 10 other guys lined up ready to fucking take your place. So most guys will sell themselves short just for some fucking loopy line. It's just, if you're mad at me for telling you the truth, would be mad at yourself for the truth being fucking a little more daunting than you can handle. But we'd go out and have fires and whatnot, and I'd be up in the middle of nowhere. And I'd be picking up radio stations on the AM band from all over the country. You know, I'd be listening to like the Twilight Zone or some shit. Other people would be asleep. I'd have a case of beer. I'd be just kind of chilling, listening to my AM radio. Yeah, I'd have FM, and sometimes I tune in the FM. But late at night, I just wanted to kind of see what I could pick up, like coast to coast AM. You'd hear a station out of like Vegas, and you're up in the Northwest, or out of LA, or sometimes you pick up stations out of like Calgary, Alberta, you know, and hey, what's up from Minnesota? You pick up these stations from like middle of nowhere, and there'd be phaser stations. Like after the sun goes down, the static interference, you know, all that's gone from the solar interference. And then the big stations in some areas would shut down. You'd pick up stations like Christian stations out of fucking Mexico, dude. You know, because they could do the big megawatt station. Because Mexico just didn't give a fuck. They were like, yeah, here you go. I always had that kind of aspect of myself. Like when I first started driving truck, sometimes I just get sick and tired of whatever. Like you could only listen to so many podcasts and stuff. And also I've always been kind of big into that. I should say always. I haven't used it in a while. And maybe I should go back to it. You know those radio apps where you could listen to, like there's stations out of, you know, England, like Sabras Radio. They play basically, it's all like Punjabi and stuff, you know, Punjabi, and it's like electronic music, you know. And so basically it's one of those things where I'll be listening to it and it's pretty good. Then I'll listen to like some talk radio. There used to be this weird talk radio station out of Astoria, Oregon. And when they had nothing better to play, they'd go out there and, oh, don't you try it again. Fuck, that smelled bad. That's why that soil's turned over. But when there was nothing else on, they'd basically play this robotic repeating station of, thank you for listening. In the background, be like, thank you for listening. For the station, blah, blah, blah. We are not programming right now. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I was like, I wish I could find that recording and just keep that around for a background, or maybe a startup or a thing for a background thing, you know, on videos. Because it was so weird. It was so obscure. And my mental image was like this spider walker machine with a TV, like a tube TV with like a single eyeball coming up from it. I'm like this thing just walking around in the TV with having a picture of a mouth, you know, just walking along through the waste, walking through the land. You know, this is like a little servitor type of thing. And it's one of those gigs where I just dig. Sometimes tuning out. As honestly, like when it comes to YouTube and all that, basically the YouTube algorithm, you have to constantly, like, you got to grab a hat and pull like a new idea out of it just to have something fresh to watch, because the algorithm doesn't know how to suggest anything. The algorithm knows how to show you the same shit over and over again. And eventually it's just like watching the daytime news, where it's like, oh, well, I've already heard the news. I've already seen the weather. I've already seen the major story. And then it's just someone else's take on it, someone else's outlook on whatever happened. And some of them, you tune into them because you're interested, but it gets boring. It gets fucking tired. So I tune back to radio. You know, I listen to, like, there's this robot station south of here from a number of miles that plays like 60s, like a sprinkle of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and just a sprinkle of the 90s. And occasionally they have a little paid programming. When I was up there doing my laundry, and I did some shorts or some videos on that up north, on the place where I was up next to that, you know, there's a little side creek that fed into part of Twin River. I'm up there listening to the local classic rock station that's across the water, across the salt water a little ways. And I'm just like, yeah, it's kind of nice tuning out to that. And if I could pick up at a reasonable hour, you know, and I know if I wanted to pay for it, like Coast to Coast AM, for instance, I could basically listen to it. But, you know, honest, I got to be honest. I don't want to say that I'm getting old, because I'm not old. I just don't, at a certain point at the night, like I'd rather go to bed about 8 o'clock at night, maybe 9, maybe 10. If the video game's really gripping, then, you know, maybe I'll stay up a little later and watch some Star Trek while I'm playing video games. But there's a lot of times where, like, let's just say let's be honest. I'm kind of an old man in this respect. And I'm going to have to remutate into being a trucker again. Like, I remember everything I did, but getting back used to that long day. I don't drink coffee out here. I don't. And so basically, it's one of those gigs where, you know, I just get up, kind of do what I do, sometime early in the morning. Dog usually wants to get up. And if I could smoke weed, because I can't because I want to go back to working, I would take that good mid-afternoon nap, take like an hour or two mid-afternoon nap and stay up until about midnight. You know, take the dog out to do his thing. You know, cook dinner about, probably, what's in the in-between time? After Xena. So after Xena's, that 70s show for 2 hours. And then 8 o'clock is original Trek. And I've seen most everything. I think I've seen all of those episodes. So I would probably, 8 o'clock, I'd cook dinner, assuming I got that mid-afternoon nap. And if that was the case, I'd probably stay up and, you know, listen to Coast AM if I could pick it up. Maybe I'd see some critters running around here. I gotta tell you, much like the mana fading away from society in any sort of video game, as the hunters come out here and randomly shoot anything that's not totally afraid of everything, eventually, you know, the critters, you don't see them nearly as much. Some good-looking hawks around here, I gotta tell you that much. Crows and hawks. Occasionally see a lizard. Got the little ground squirrels running around, and the territorial little bird that shows up and lands on near the windows and it's like looking in like, what are you doing here? But yeah, part of the reason I even come down here is just for seeing the little cat-sized foxes. And that is becoming harder and rarer. All because of assholes, by the way. Fucking assholes. Assholes with guns. Yeah, honestly, to some degree, when I look at some of the people that come out here, you know, just to be real about it, there's a lot of them. What they remind me of is like rich kids without accountability. Like people that come out here and throw trash around. So I don't know, maybe I am becoming something of an old man. Because I'd rather go to bed at a reasonable hour and wake up in an early morning. You know? Be damned if my usual station, my old station I used to have here was great. There was 10 channels. One of them was all fucking cartoons. It was like Cartoon Network, MeTV Tunes, and then there was this H&I that came on 3 hours earlier. It was great. Fucking great. You watch all my Star Trek, and I'd stay up until about 10 and go to bed. Maybe not even 10. Sometimes, You know, that DS9 would come on at 7. And it was fucking perfect. Perfect rhythm, man. But yeah, sometimes when I just get sick and tired of all the internet shit or whatever's going on, I just turn on the radio. Or I turn on my MP3s and I listen to like fucking elevator music and shit. When I don't want to deal with ads, like I've got, you know, the track, the MP3 will be like an hour and a half long. Just a collection of different music from malls or grocery stores, different eras, even weird, obscure electronic music. Hell, I've got like over 1,100 punk rock songs, you know. And I'll just turn it on and I'll just zone the fuck out. It's nice. It's nice. And part of it just comes down to this world is a drag a lot of the time. Like the left wing is a drag and the right wing are a bunch of pussies. The right wing talks about, oh, we need to, you know, save America and all that nonsense. And yet they do nothing, and the left wing wants to destroy it. And then they're all talking about, oh my God, it's the end of the world, it's all this and all that. And it's just like, and I mean, even some of the Christians I've run into, the Christians will be running around going, see, this is revelation, this is revelation, this is revelation. You mean like it was revelation back in the 80s? I mean like revelation like in the early 90s, the mid 90s, the late 90s, the early 2000s, the mid 2000s. Basically like I had a buddy back in the day when I was living out in the woods, and him and his girlfriend were making bug out bags because of during the Bush era, right? And they're like, no, dude, it's all coming around. We want to be ready. If the shit hits the fan, we're going to be ready to walk into the woods. Okay. And my kind of thoughts on it was back then, you should always be prepared for that possibility, but you shouldn't direct your entire fucking life around it. Because guess what? Every single like little, you know, it's the end, it's this, it's that, it's that. And you know what? Some of the corruption, some of the things that you're right, you are right. Some of the conspiracies out there, it turns out that's not a conspiracy. You're just ahead of the curve. You know, and then the normies find out about it years later, and they're just like, well, you know, that's something that happened. And they try to, sweep it under the rug like it didn't happen. But like, yeah, you're ahead of the curve. But at the end, just like any sort of, like, remember 9/11, remember how the people will be talking about 9/11? And I enjoyed some conversations with that. At what point is that conversation eating up time where you could have been enjoying your fucking life? Like playing video games, and people are like, well, you need to be politically motivated. No, I don't. Like, it's like, you look at that whole thing with the Amaru thing, where she's basically just some gamer streamer, kind of, like European Asian hybrid. Yeah, basically cute girl example. And she was getting attacked by all these other people for not being political. Does it ever occur to a lot of people that there are situations where there's tons of people who don't want to be political? They don't care. Or they just don't feel like they're informed enough to have an opinion on it. Or, like something she said was great. If you're coming to some random streamer for your political opinions, you might want to reevaluate that. And that really pissed off a lot of people on the left, because that's their entire grift, just like a lot of people on the right. It's like, you guys remember back before this YouTube thing was a thing? And there was a while where YouTube was an obscure, kind of weird thing. And back before that, the permission came from like CNN and Fox News, the AB Alphabet Soup networks. And as there were people who just tuned out. And people say, well, how can't you, it's going on and it's affecting you. Why are you not motivated by this? And they're like, some people are rational about it, and they look at the world and they go, well, I don't really enjoy it. I vote for what I believe in, if they even vote at all. And then after that, I get on with my fucking life. Not everything is some trigger thing, and not everything is some major event. You know, like, and I don't know how much truth there is behind it. You know, the people talking about how anger increases your cortisol, which shortens your fucking life, you know. And you think about that for a second. You know, you look at that and you're like, yeah, why would you want to just constantly be angry about something that, frankly, a lot of times you being angry about it won't do you any good. And so there are times I'll take up a more generic topic. Like there's really nothing new going on. Oh, Trump said this. Whoop-de-doo. He says something fucking Trump. He says that he pulls a Trump every other day. Okay? Or Democrats did something stupid this. Okay, can we make a collage of it? Collage of the week. You know, what was that thing that Sargon of Akkad used to do? It was funny. Was it This Week in Stupid or something like that? Or This Week in whatever? Like we could just make it a collage of stupid shit for the week, you know? And you kind of wonder, I mean, I know if I talked about normal stuff like science, camping, cooking, people don't like that. People like something, people really like getting engaged and getting pissed off. But there's times I look at the world and I just kind of like a stoner, I just tune the fuck out. I just turn on my tunes and go for a hike. I just turn on, you know, the AM radio and do stuff around whatever we want to call this here. The yard. You know, like I got my solar oven set up over there. I don't know if I want to sustain the level of energy that it takes to give a shit about a lot of things anymore. I don't know if that's, some people would say it's giving up. Others would say it's fucking maturity. You know? And then the other question is, with the time, like for instance, the time that you're pissed off about some cause, some issue, like vegan or, you know, fucking the environmental shit or, you know, what the liberals are doing, how much money could you have made with that time? Maybe that's this is a side conversation we should have at some point. Maybe that's the whole plan. If we keep you constantly distracted with some anger-induced shit versus things that you can sustain from yourself. Like when I listen to my music, my, you know, the collections of MP3s and stuff I have, I don't have to pay anything for that. I don't have to do anything for that. I don't have to go and I don't have to wait for the next person. There isn't some click-based nonsense. I just turn it on and I listen to my tunes. I turn on the radio, same gig. Listen to some talk radio, and I'll listen to both sides. There's decent NPR stations around here. Surprise! I listen to NPR just like I listen to conservative talk. And I listen to it for a bit, and it's kind of like, well, that's kind of interesting. And then I go on with my fucking day. But when you realize how much time you could have spent doing something you really enjoy, not that I don't enjoy ragging on the libs and ragging on fucking loser conservatives. I do enjoy it. At some points, it's just like, just tune out, turn it off. But that's just me talking about whatever. It's Freedom Phil, like, subscribe, take it easy.